Daf Nun Dalet Amud Aleph right at the top. Harachelim is kavulos. The Mishnah said that the rechelim are permitted to go out kavulos. My kavulos, what does this mean? The Gemara explains shemachavlen al yeshalehem lamata. They tie the tails down. Kidei shelo ya'olem azacharim. They cover the mokama erva so that the zacharim cannot mate with them. There are times when they don't want mating, such as when the rechelim are nursing, etc. So therefore, at those times, they tie the tail down to prevent the mating. And this is considered to be for the shima, for the protection of the animal, and therefore they are permitted to go out in that manner. Where do we see in the pasuk the lashon of kaval implies not producing, like we're saying over here, it's to not produce a child. Where do we see that it's the lashon of Yavid Peri who Dirsi? Maharem ha'elo asher nasat liach vayikra elahen eretz kaval Yomi Masechet. Shlomo Melech gave payment to Chir Melech Tzar for his help in building the Beis Hamikdash, for the wood that he gave, the materials that he gave, the men that he gave to help build them. So he gave them cities in Eretz Yisrael. So Hiram said, "What are these cities that you have given me?" He was displeased with the payment that he got. My Eretz Kaval. He called them Eretz Kaval. What does it mean? What's Eretz Kaval? There were people there that were surrounded, tied up with gold and silver. That's pshat. How do you explain what it says? It says he was displeased with him. Now, if you're explaining that kaval means that there is full of gold and silver, why should he be displeased if there were people who were so wealthy? Yes, that is the reason. Since they're so wealthy and they're pampered and spoiled, they don't work hard. So that's why he was displeased. But upon him, you see that kaval is a lotion of non-productivity, of not making pairs, of not producing pairs. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Omar Eretz Chumten. So he says a different shot. Eretz kaval, there's Chumten. It's a salty soil that doesn't produce fruit. So again, it's a lotion of non-productivity, not producing fruit. Eretz Chumten Hayva Maikor Le Kaval Dimishtarge Bekara Ad Kavla. It's called kaval on the shame of an ankle because the people's feet would sink in it to their ankles. The army ancient people say, Ara mekavla peri. It's a land of kavla that does not produce fruit. Upon him, you see that kavulois is to prevent making oise peris. Kavuna is, so the Mishnah says that they are allowed to go out kavunais, that they are also allowed to go out kavunais. My kavuna is, what does kavunas means? It means that they would tie a baguette around, a garment around the newborn female sheep, that they would tie it to preserve the whiteness and the beauty of their wool. So that's considered to be for the purpose of the animal, and therefore it's mutter. We see this in a different context, but we see that this means that it's very bright white. When it's first born, it has a very, very bright wool. They want to preserve that whiteness. They protect it and cover it so it should not get dirty. So now we learned in the Mishnah, Lagabit Sarah is Getzemer Lovet. The whiteness and the brightness of the leprosy, of the spot of leprosy of the se'es is Getzemer Loven. It's like white wool. Might Loven. Which white wool are we referring to? It means a very bright white wool from a newborn sheep that they protect it and they cover it and they protect for the wool. That's where it's very, very bright. So you see that this whiteness is of the the first when it's born, the first day that it's born, it has that very bright white wool, and in our context, that's why they wrap it up to protect it. So the Mishnah said the Tanakama said that the goats could go out through where the udders are tied. So we had a three-way machlokes in the Mishnah. The Tanakama said that they can go out through that they're allowed to permit it to go out through and then Rav Yosi says it's also. And then it was qualified, Rabbi Yehuda qualified And Rav Yehuda says, "Izim Yosef Shrus Liyavesh Avaloi Lachalev." So the Tanna Kama permitted all of this. Rav Yosef also Bekula. He said there are also Rachelm Kvunais, but as far as the Izim and tying the udders by the Izim, they're all cases. It's also Rav Yehuda was Machalek. He says you can tie the others. It's Liyavish to dry up the milk, but not to collect the milk. Itma Rav Amar Halacha ki Rav Yehuda. So he said the halacha is like Rav Yehuda. Rav said, or Machalek, whether it's Liyavish or Lechalek. Shmuel Amar Halacha ki Rav Yossi, that it's also in all cases. Some learn it that they said it on their own, not saying the halacha is like one or like the other. They said it on as their own opinion. Rav Amar Liyavish Muter v'lo Lechalek. Shmuel Amar Echad ve'Echad Zeh also, and Shmuel says no, it's also in both cases. So Taisus explains why didn't they just simply say the halacha is like Rav Yehuda? Halacha is like Rav Yehuda. He said because there are some versions which switched around the opinions of the Tanoim, so therefore they said it as a halacha without referencing the Tana. They said what the halacha is. That Rav says it's a difference if it's Liyavish or Lechalek, but Shmuel says it's also in both cases. Some learned it going on referring to the following. Izim, it says, through is Liyavish or Lechalek. That goats can go out through rois, Liyavish or Lechalek, Mishum Rav Yehuda ben Meseir Amro Kach Halacha. He says that really is Mi'ikar Adin, that is the halacha. Aval Mi Mepis, Ezel Liyavish Vezel Lechalek. Who will be able to determine, who will make a girl literally, to determine where is Lechalek, where is Liyavish. People will see the goats going around with a pouch tied around the others. They'll think it's even mutter even to collect the milk. So therefore, even though you're right, Mikir Adin, but since we cannot, it's not clear for what purposes is going out, it'll come out of the kolah. So in both cases, it's also Shein Makir, Mechad V'zeh, V'echad Zeh also. So therefore we answered in both cases. So some say that it's going on that, and Amar Shmuel of Amila Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel Halacha Rav Yehuda ben Meseir. He said that is the halacha. Now, according to this version, he's not really paskening like Rav Yossi. He's paskening Ikra din like Rav Yehuda, but Lamaise it's also because of the Chashash Rav Yehuda ben Meseir. He also Ravina Amar Rav Yehuda Halacha ke Tana Kama. He says the halacha is like the Tana Kama. Like the way Rashi explains it is the Tana Kama of our Mishnah that is both mutter. Taisus explains that there is a nafkamina lahalacha between whether we say Shmuel, where Shmuel would say that the halacha is like Rav Yossi, or the halacha is like Rav Yehuda ben Meseir. There's enough kamina. If the halacha is like Rav Yossi, then it's also in both cases, in all places. But if the halacha is like Rav Yehuda ben Meseir, then really, essentially, if it's liyavish, it should be mutter. It's just that it's not clear if what the intent is. But he says, however, if it's in a place where people do not tie the udders, they do not make this pouch to collect the milk, so then there's no chashash. And those places, if we say the halacha is like Rav Yehuda ben Meseir, and those places he would agree that it's mutter. So it's enough kamina in how you learn between these, whether it's halacha Rav Yossi or halacha Rav Yehuda ben Meseir. Zok the Mishnah, in what way can the animal not go out? Lo yetze agamol metulteles lo akad v'lo yirog. A behema agamol cannot go out metulteles. What is a metulteles? Rashi has several pshatim. One pshat is like it's a saddle cloth, like donkeys have. Another pshat, which Rashi says, is that it's a cushion that was placed between the tail and the tail strap so that the strap should not scratch the animal. So these things you cannot go out with metulteles because it might fall off and you might come to carry it. And he can't go out with the animal tied, the feet, the legs tied in a certain way, which the Gemara will explain specifically what's referring to. Behemoths, and this applies to other behemoths as well. They would tie the animals in this way so they don't run away. But on Shabbos, it's also because this is considered a masui, and therefore it's not permitted. A person should not tie camels one to other in a procession, in a chain, one to the other, and then pull them. More will explain why. But he could have them not tied together, but take the separate ropes and put them into his hands. So long as he does not wrap it around his hand, we'll see in the Gemara why not. He can't go out with the metultelis, with the cushion that's tied to its tail, because it might fall off and he might come to carry it. But if it's tied both to the tail and the hump, then we're not that concerned. It's more secure. We're not concerned that it's going to fall off and he might come to carry it. He can also go out with a metultelis that's tied to the placenta. Part of the cilia, the placenta of the animal, is hanging. He can tie it to there because it will cause great pain if he tries to slip out of it. So therefore we're not concerned that he'll do that, and therefore we're not concerned it'll fall off and he'll come to carry. The animal cannot be tied together. In which way? What do we mean? Akud means that it's tied Yad v'regel ki Yisroel ben Avram, like by the Akeda, where the arms and the legs are tied together, both arms and both legs, so that the neck would be outstretched to facilitate shchita. So here it means that it can't go out. Now it doesn't mean that both forelegs and hind legs, but it means it can't go out with the foreleg and the hind leg tied together. Rogel shloyachav yoral gabizra. The rogel is that it can't take on the foreleg and take the lower part and tie it to the upper part and tie it together. So again, they used to tie it together so the animal doesn't run away, but on Shabbos this is also. So Layaakov Yadol Gabizroy V'Yiksha. Meisvei Akud Shtei Yadayim V'Shtei Raglayim. Akud is the two forelegs together and the two hind legs together, which is not like we said before. Rogel Shloyachav Yadol Gabizroy V'Yiksha. Rogel is the same, but Akud is something different. Akud is that they can't tie them both together, the forelegs together and the hind legs together. More answers. Who Damar Ki Haitana? He says like the founder Tanya. Akud Akedas Yad V'Regel. That akud is yad v'regel, oy shtei yadayim shtei raglayim. So yad v'regel is the way we defined it before, or two yadayim v'tu raglayim. Rogel shliyachav yadol gabizroi v'yiksha. Frag the Gemara akvekati loydami bish lamareisha v'seifa nicha. The first explanation, the end when it says rogel, that's fine. But the second explanation of akud is not consistent with what he said. Mitziyosa kasha. Elahu de Omar and Chanami. So he's not going according to that Tana. Rabbi Yehuda is not going to that Tana. He's going according to the following Tana, Ki Hai Tana, which says Akud Zakedas Yad V'Regel Ki Yisroel ben Avram. Rogel Shloyachav Yadol Gabizroy V'Yiksha. V'Yiksha Gamaldim. So it says you can't tie the camels one to each other in a chain, and you can't pull them. My timer, because it looks like he's taking out for business. It looks like he's taking out to sell in the marketplace. Chinka means a circle, and they used to tie them in a procession in a chain, and then come to the market and lead them around in a circle so that the potential buyers could inspect them and purchase. So here, if he does it in that way, it looks like he's doing schayra business on Shabbos. Aval machnis, but the Mishnah says he could put the separate ropes into his hand. That's permitted as long as he does not wrap it around. This isser of wrapping around is not a Shabbos-stikin isser. This is an isser of kilayim. In fact, more kilayim to my. What's kilayim? What are we referring to? Ilim kilayim to Adam. If you're telling me it's because that is kilayim to Adam that he's tied together with an animal, just like we have two animals. So you can't be chayrish with a shor v'chamor yachtav. You can't have plow with two separate. So you can't combine two different animals together. So you mean to say, since he's wrapping around his hand with the animals, it's two different animals that are awesome, but a person, there's no isser with a person. So you can plow with it and you can pull with it. So there's no isser for kilayim and adam in this manner. Ella, the Gemara says, what it means is a kilayim dechavol. It means if the ropes are made out of shatnez, they're different ropes of the different materials of tzemra pishlim, and now if he's wrapping it around his hand, so now he's getting the benefit from the different cloth, from the different the Semru Pishtim, and he has now the Kalaim, similar to wearing a baguette of Shatnez. He has now the ropes, which are Shatnez. I frag the Gemara, why should this be also Tanya Taikev Tchifa Achas in a Chibur? The Shatnez is only if it's attached in somewhat of a permanent way. So let's say he's stitching a garment. If there's only one stitch, it's not considered connected, it's not a Chibur, that's not Shatnez. So over here, why should be, just because he wraps it around his hand, why should this be an Isser of Shatnez? Even if they are Tsemru Pishtim, but they're not combined together. So Shatnez is only the Tsemru Pishtim when it's woven together, when it's combined together. The more answers, we are talking about Kalayim de Chavolim. It means you can't tie it together and then tie it with 2 knots and then wrap it around his hands, because then it's considered combined together because it has a double knot and it's wrapped around his hand. He's getting hano from it. That's kilayim. Now on Shabbos, it's mutter to take the ropes in his hand. So the wrapping around is a kilayim problem. But on Shabbos, it is mutter to take the separate ropes and put it in his hand. But Shmuel says, but there is another consideration in that the rope cannot be hanging down at tefach. It can't be hanging down at tefach. That is still awesome. Vatana de Shmuel tvachayim. It says, Tana Shmuel says, tvachayim says 2, not 1 tefach. Not says 2. So the issue over here is if the rope is hanging down, it has the appearance of not that he's pulling the animals or the camels. The person looking at it, there's a rope hanging down from the person's hand. He might not make the connection between him and the animals, and he might think, oh, he's carrying a rope, and the rope is hanging down. So now one pshat says that if it's hanging even a tefach, then it might look to onlookers that he's carrying the rope. Tana Shmuel says tvachayim. It says 2. So Amarabai Hashda Dama Shmuel Tefah Tana Shmuel tvachayim Shmuel the halach lamaisa slash minan. The Tana Shmuel says 2, meaning meikra din really should only be 2. But lamaisa said halach lamaisa that if a person is asked the shali should say a tefach because it is hard to distinguish between the two, and we don't want to be mekel. And therefore we're machmer as an additional safeguard, and therefore we say halach lemaisa, we're machmer for a tefach. The Brisa says that it's mutter. It seems to imply that it doesn't matter how long the rope is, how long it's hanging down, is so long as that it's a tefach from the ground. So this seems to contradict both versions. It seems to be that the only consideration is that it has to be a tefach from above the ground. Moran says no. That's not referring to the length of the rope that's extending down from his hand. That's referring to the rope that is between his hand and the animal. This rope has to be at least a tefach from the ground, elevated from the ground, because it has to be clear that the rope is being used to pull the animal. Now, if it's too close to the ground and people don't see that it's being extended to the person, they'll think that the animal is carrying a rope. They won't make the connection and say, oh, it's the rope, the animal is being pulled by the person, the rope is being used for the purpose of the animal so that the person can pull it. So therefore it has to be elevated from the ground, at least a tefach, so that people can see that the rope now extends and it's not just animal carrying a rope that's dragging on the ground. So that has nothing to do with the discussion with Shmuel's halacha of how far the rope extends from his hand.